Lately, I've been thinking a lot about my teachers. Maybe it has something to do with the high holidays. I don't know. I guess obviously it has a lot to do with the high holidays. When it's your job to lead a community, at least from my perspective, you're always looking for good shoulders to stand on so you can be at your highest. And I wrote this week in the commentary on the Parsha about how my teachers, Rabbi Elliot Dorff and Rabbi Brad Artson, helped me grapple with essential questions of human experience. And today, as we study Parashat Eikev, I'm thinking of two different teachers of mine. Rabbi Arthur Waskow, who I have not met in person, who's the author of a book called Seasons of Our Joy. The subtitles are A Modern Guide to the Jewish Holidays and A Spiritual Path Through the Year's Changing Seasons for the First Time or Traditional Celebrant. Some interesting subtitles. Also, my teacher, Rabbi Mark Borovitz, founding rabbi and rabbi emeritus of Beit Teshuvah, an amazing institution of recovery from addiction, he was the person that really taught me and showed me how learning, and specifically learning Torah, is a spiritual practice. It's engaging the mind and the soul at the same time, similarly to how yoga is a spiritual practice that engages the body and the soul as one. I learned from him that connecting my mind and my soul can be profoundly healing, and also that regular study of Torah is a practice of discipline. I've taken this on in my own life with my study of Talmud every day, but Rabbi Borovitz, his thing was Parashat HaShavua. He would be very disciplined about studying the week's Torah portion every week. So standing on the shoulders of these two teachers of mine, Rabbi Arthur Waskow, who wrote Seasons of Our Joy, and Rabbi Mark Borovitz, who teaches that studying Torah is a spiritual practice, let's look a little bit at our Parshat Eikev. Like every Parsha in the book of Deuteronomy, there is some great stuff in there, lots of things that we could focus on, and our focus this week will be the Jewish calendar. Our focus this year, rather, will be the Jewish calendar on this week's Parsha Eikev. Rabbi Waskow has a novel perspective on the Jewish calendar, so let's dive in. The first thing we need to know about the Jewish calendar is that it's lunar and solar. There's actually a word for this, it's lunisolar. So what does this mean exactly? Our secular calendar, the one that we go by most commonly, is a solar calendar. When we say a date like August 1st or September 10th, it has no information in that about the new moon and the full moon. Now, there's a type of lunar calendar also, like, for example, the Muslim calendar. And I don't know much about Islam, but one thing I do know is that Ramadan is not at the same season from year to year. Sometimes it's in the summer, sometimes it's in the winter. Now, another calendar besides the Jewish calendar that's lunisolar is the Chinese calendar. So I don't know much about the Chinese calendar, but I do know that the Chinese New Year is always at about the same time each year, kind of in January somewhere. And that's like Rosh Hashanah. It's always kind of in the fall somewhere. So Rabbi Waskow teaches that the solar rhythm of the year and the lunar rhythm of the year are each a coherent whole unto themselves, that they're similar and they reinforce one another, and that they merge with one another each fall and the month of Tishrei, which is not the month that's coming up, but as we know, the month immediately after that. It's coming up ahead. So let's look at the solar rhythm of our calendar first. These are the Shalosh Regalim, the 3 pilgrimage festivals that are discussed in this week's parasha. Now, Rabbi Waskow gets innovative here. He adds a 4th festival, which is not in our parasha, but it's elsewhere in our Torah, and he links each of these festivals to a season of the year. So our festival of spring is, of course, Passover, the birth of the Jewish people, when God freed us from slavery. Each year, it's the birth of the plants and the crops of the new year. It's a time of beginning. It corresponds with the spring equinox, the vernal equinox, approximately, not exactly every year. And the reason why it's approximate is because Passover always falls on a full moon. Now, moving on to summer, my personal favorite season. Our festival of Shavuot marks the onset of summer. In Rabbi Waskow's words, the peak of nature's glory. And as someone who has lived in California for most of my life, I think of this time of year as the time when all the plants are done growing, but nothing has dried out yet. It's all very green. It's the peak of our relationship with God because at this time of year we receive the 10 Commandments. And there's such a buildup to the peak. We count the Omer starting on Passover and Shavuot. So we count these 49 days, and 7 weeks and 1 day after Passover comes the holiday of Shavuot, and it always falls during a waxing moon, where the moon's getting bigger. Now, our fall festival, Sukkot. After harvest in the fall, it corresponds with the fall equinox. And like Passover, approximately and not exactly every year, because it always falls on a full moon. It's kind of the inverse, or maybe the complement to Passover. Passover marks springtime, the beginning of the year's growth, and this is fall, the culmination of the year's bounty, the year's harvest. We reap the benefits of our work, and in doing so, we see that we have the power to achieve, but we don't ever have the power to be perfect. We dwell in huts, our sukkahs, and we experience the beauty and fragility of being in the sukkah. We are barely protected in the physical sukkah. It's a little bit of protection, but not too much. And it makes us all the more aware of God's non-physical protection of us as we move through our human experience. So these are the 3 pilgrimage festivals mentioned in this week's parashah. So what about the 4th one? What about the 4th season? Rabbi Gunther Plaut, in his Torah commentary, comments on Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 15 in this week's parashah, and he picks up on the phrase Shivat Yamim, 7 days, explaining that the festival of Sukkot, as we know, lasts 7 days. He points out also that in Leviticus chapter 23 and Numbers chapter 29, twice elsewhere in the Torah, but not in our parashah, there is another festival mentioned, an 8th-day festival observance. This is Shmini Atzeret, which translates literally as the 8th day of ingathering. Rabbi Waskow links Shmini Atzeret, which is technically not one of the Shalosh Regalim, to the season of winter. And he goes on and says, this is the festival we must explain at greatest length, because this is the one that is the least known, that is the least visible. It signals the onset of winter. It's the festival of inwardness, contraction, starting over again. It echoes the moment in Jewish history when we completed our wandering in the wilderness, and a new task coming into the land of Israel for the first time was now before us. It echoes the feeling and meaning of the end of Moses' life and the new beginning for the Jewish people under the new leadership of Moses' successor, Joshua. Only on Shmini Atzeret do we read the very last parashah of our Torah, V'zot HaBracha, which narrates the end of Moses' life. And immediately after this, the very next Aliyah, we read the first parashah of our Torah, Bereshit. In the cycle of our year, we don't come to an end point. Instead, we come to a starting over again point. Unlike Passover and Sukkot, which fall on the full moon, and unlike Shavuot, which falls on the waxing moon, Shmini Atzeret is our only holiday that falls on the waning moon, as the light of the moon is diminishing. And that's the rhythm of our Shalosh Regalim, our 3 festivals, and Rabbi Waskow adds one to correspond to the rhythms and seasons of our solar year. Rabbi Waskow teaches that the lunar rhythm of the year is similar to the solar rhythm and illustrates in its own similar and different way the rhythms of our world and of Jewish practice. He highlights the month of Tishrei, the 7th month, which I know all of us are very much looking forward to, and points out that just as the 7th day is special, is Shabbat, the 7th month is special, is a time of great holiness. And we see that in our 7th month, we have 4 festivals, just like 4 festivals for the seasons of the year. Rabbi Waskow teaches that these 4 festivals in the lunar cycle in the 7th month correspond and connect to the 4 festivals of the solar cycle of our year. We begin, of course, with Rosh Hashanah, the new moon of the month of Tishrei. On this day, we say in our liturgy, Hayom Harat Olam. This is the birthday of the world. It's the beginning of the 10 days of awe, a special and spiritually intense time of the year when we take the opportunity to make a new spiritual beginning for ourselves. In this way, Rosh Hashanah, like Passover, is a time of new beginnings. Rosh Hashanah is marked by the new moon, and Passover is marked by the onset of spring. We reach our spiritual peak with Yom Kippur, the day of most intense closeness with God, when we get honest both with God and ourselves about the ways we fall short. And knowing that we will be forgiven, knowing that we will be loved, we can speak openly about our imperfection. Rabbi Waskow teaches that this moment in the year at Yom Kippur, each Jew individually feels closest to God. And that this holiday parallels the holiday of Shavuot, when the Jewish people as a whole was closest to God when we received the 10 Commandments. Yom Kippur is marked by the waxing moon, the time the moon is growing toward its peak. Shavuot is marked by the growing sunlight, the time the sun is growing toward its peak. Both these holidays carry energy and hope as they make us ready for the moment of greatest brightness. Then we reach Sukkot, our holiday of fulfillment, our holiday of the year's harvest, which corresponds to the full moon, the fulfillment and greatest lunar brightness of the month of Tishrei. For Rabbi Waskow, this is the moment in the year when the solar and lunar rhythms intersect on this theme of fulfillment. The light in our night sky is brightest, is literally most full, and our storehouses too are the most full they will be all year after the fall harvest is complete. The Torah teaches that this is the time of our greatest rejoicing. We're commanded to feel and to embody only joy. And then we have our conclusion, Shmini Atzeret, marking the time when we notice the lunar and solar cycles begin to diverge, as the light of the sun is diminishing towards winter, and at a different pace, the light of the moon is diminishing towards the next new moon, towards the next new month. And moving towards ending, both cycles will begin again. And that's our speed round tour through the Jewish year. When I'm reflecting on this, I'm thinking, why is this book so important to me? And it's not just important to me now, it's been one of the most important teachings about anything in Judaism for me for probably about 15 years. The month of Tishrei, our fall holidays, is the most important and meaningful time of the Jewish year. This is the time when all of us come out of the woodwork and gather, and for people who are not Shabbat regulars like ourselves come to synagogue, taking time out of our busy secular lives and engaging with Jewish tradition in a very profound way. Even if people are here in synagogue for just a couple of hours to hear the shofar and to hear the words of Kol Nidre, it's very important. That experience is very important. This illustrates just how powerful the month of Tishrei is, that people who don't show up any time of year will show up during the month of Tishrei. Our high holidays have a whole lot going on. There's all this interesting liturgy that only shows up once a year. There are all these observances that only show up once a year. We haven't even gotten to the Etrog and the Lulav and Hoshana Rabbah. People who were here for Hoshana Rabbah last year, we can remember that at Kiddush. This is overwhelming, all these holidays. It really is. It feels that there's all this stuff coming at us, and we miss the forest for the trees. So for me, the reason why this teaching is so important, and I hope it will be important for many of you, because Rabbi Waskow teaches us to step back from the trees and get the big picture of the forest. This helps me understand, and I hope it helps many of us understand, that even though our holidays can feel overwhelming, it's not actually the point of our holidays to be overwhelming. It's the point of our holidays to help us make sense of the rhythms of life, to find anchor points in an experience of reality that can feel like it's rushing past at an impossible pace. And for all of us here today, all of us who are taking our time to experience Shabbat, to step back from the reality that feels like it's rushing past so fast, I hope that your experience today is teaching you right now that Shabbat is an anchor point that can help you make sense of the rhythms of life. As we move through this Shabbat together and as we continue to approach the high holidays together as our holy Adat Shalom community, may we all be able to step back from the trees and see the forest. May we all find anchor points in the rhythms of life that help us as we experience reality and help us find meaning. Shabbat Shalom.